How different will the Karen Read case look if and when it's retried? We got a little bit of a glimpse of that in a recent court hearing, the first one with Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan.
The court's looking to take a bit at some bites. I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers.
And is it true that Brennan is trying to cut down on witnesses?
Well, that's the take I took away from this hearing that was held on November 13th. It was the first time that Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan appeared in court, even if with his back to the camera. The news media generally took as their headline this whole business about how they will be retesting all the data inside Karen Read's Lexus. And that's a big story. But I thought that the most important thing that came out of this hearing was that Hank Brennan, the special prosecutor, said he's still reviewing the case and he's still evaluating the case, but he wants more time in the context of asking for a continuance, which, as we record this podcast right now, has not been granted. I think the judge just wants to put a little pressure on the attorneys. But he says he needs more time in part to really evaluate the case, possibly get rid of some witnesses, and he says that he wants to pare down the case.
And so we're doing all of this to try to be as efficient as possible to avoid delays at the time of trial, and it will allow me, when I evaluate this case, which I'm still in the process of doing, of reducing the witness list substantially. And so although it does delay the case, if you allow this motion, I think it will make for a shorter, more effective, efficient trial, and I think it will be, importantly, more fair to the parties involved. And that's why I asked you to consider that continuance. I do not expect I would come before you and ask for another continuance. If something cannot get done in time with an expert of my choosing or that I would like, I appreciate I won't be able to use that expert.
Well, all right. That one thing that some people took away from that statement by Hank Brennan was, he's been brought in, he's been given a ceiling of $75,000 and he hasn't reviewed the case yet. Really?
It's a lot. I mean, it's a big case. I definitely understand that he's going to want to cut down on those witnesses. I mean, we kind of take a stab at it almost every episode where we just joke about like the Aruba trip and were these details really necessary. So it makes sense that he's going to want to cut down the witnesses, and it makes sense that it's a big case to look through. I mean, it didn't go really smooth the first time, so it makes sense that he's kind of trying to comb through it and pray for the next time, because a lot of people are feeling like it's just going to go the same way.
Well, I hope that he does pare down on the witnesses, because there were 74 witnesses in the first trial. It went on interminably. Some of them, we just scratched our heads. Why did they put that witness on? Because as soon as Adam Lally sat down, the defense attorneys, either Yannetti or Alan Jackson or Elizabeth Little sometimes, would get up and just tear them to shreds. They turned most of the witnesses around. And I think that if they can cut down on the number of witnesses, the time wasted on the witnesses, it would be a good thing. The first trial, of course, they didn't try it every day, so it did take them 2.5 months. But if they could pare down the number of witnesses, it's probably a good thing. But the only other comment I would have is I think everybody in YouTube land has watched the whole trial. So why didn't he?
Yeah. He should be very familiar with this case by this point now. That's a good no.
Although a lot of YouTubers, I'll take back that criticism by saying a lot of YouTubers are busy eating their Doritos and, patting the dog and things like that and talking. As an attorney, you've got to review every word. And usually what an attorney does if they're brought into a case in this type of a context, you read the transcripts, which certainly would have to be available. One of the things as a sidebar, I hate to mention it this early in the show, was all of those sidebars. Well, both parties want to take a look at those, because especially Brennan, he wasn't there. He wasn't a party to them. And even Yannetti and Jackson and Little, even they, how do you remember every single sidebar? So they would, and I would think the court would want them to be more prepared, because those are usually legal arguments. This case says that evidence rule says that, and are you going to weigh what's prejudicial and what is probative in front of the jury? No, all that stuff is done at the sidebar. So anyhow, The other major issue, as I said before, is that they are going to go back into the telematics in the Lexus that Karen Reed was driving. That they're just going to do it. That's not the issue. The issue is how they're going to do it. As you remember, there was an issue as to megabytes and megabits from the expert. And Hank Brennan tried to explain that away in saying, yes, we are going to do a new analysis of the electronic data on Karen Reed's Lexus. It's going to be done.
The information taken from the informatics manual and the information taken from the telestream manual had some irregularities. What he realized is that all of that data was unreadable. And so initially he thought that the data was not fully downloaded or compiled. He checked and he believed that gigabits were gigabytes and that there was a discrepancy. And the reason he thought this is because there was very obvious information missing from that procedure. There was information including navigation information regarding phones that were plugged into the radio, travel logs, things that are particularly relevant and material in this case, information that is going to be extraordinarily inculpatory or exculpatory in this case.
And so the defense, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, you can go.
Okay. So the defense attorneys, Jackson notably said he doesn't have a problem with them going into the telematics and finding out what is in there if they didn't do it right the first time. But Jackson and Yannetti's real concern is we don't want the guy going in there and saying, oh, I found this, but then the evidence is destroyed. The chip is destroyed. So Jackson very adamantly argued, we want to be there and watch. And of course, Brennan says, well, we don't want you having anything to do with it, but I don't object to you being there. So Jackson was just very clear that he doesn't want this stuff going on unless they are there to watch whatever work is being done.
I don't have a principled objection to doing the retesting. What I have a problem with is that their new expert, Mr. Burgess, right at the beginning, fundamentally misunderstood the data set on the three chips, the 2-micron chips and the stanchion chip that he looked at, didn't understand the difference between megabytes and megabits, gigabytes and gigabits, and that gave us pause. If he didn't understand that, which is at the foundation of reading the data, we're concerned that some of the data could be destroyed in whatever process he engages in. Like I said, we don't have a principled objection to the work that's going to be done. We simply want to make sure that nothing is destroyed in doing that work. It's not, and I would take a little issue with something Mr. Brennan said, it's not that the data set is missing information. We don't know that it's missing information. Berla has now updated software that we believe, I think both sides believe, could be beneficial in culling or teasing out that data set from those chips. That didn't exist when Ms. Gaffney did her work previously. She put it on a reader, it was unreadable.
So you just have to wonder, there's Karen watching everything going on. Why didn't they do it right the first time? Yeah, yes, I did hear what he just said about the software not being available, or the updated software not being available at that time. But I don't know. They had some pretty precise, and I hate to keep going back to the Murdoch trial, but in that trial, there was some pretty precise information. It was limited to what they could report, but they had times that the ignition was turned on and times the ignition was turned off. And it was fairly precise. So why couldn't the good old Commonwealth, which has obviously a deep well of taxpayer money that they have no concern over, why didn't they do it right the first time? Why does it have to be done the second time?
Yeah, I'm really curious on the logistics of actually getting data from these cars, because it does seem like, they store a lot more information than you would have ever expected. And interested into why this seems like such a point of contention, because they just want to be observing while the extraction is happening. And I think it's a valid concern to, after the bit and bite incident, to, question if they're going to do things correctly. So, the thing is just like in the actual execution, things might be different. Like what happens if they're about to do something and then they get into an argument? No, you can't do that. But I think still in general, I don't really think it should be an issue for them to watch the way that they're doing it. Will they get that much more information? I guess they think that they will. I don't know how much more information they're going to get, but I guess it's kind of like with the jury situation where I'm just like, just call them, just watch them, just do it, just get it over with.
Yeah. So I think the idea generally is that Hank Brennan is very concerned that the first trial ended the way it did in a mistrial. Of course, there's the contention that the jury was unanimous in acquitting Karen Reed on counts 1 and 3, notably the second-degree murder. That's as we speak, and this could change at any time as we speak. That whole issue is up at the Supreme Judicial Court level. But he came into the case saying, all right, something went wrong here that we didn't get our conviction, or the Commonwealth didn't get their conviction. Something's wrong. So we've got to go back and do everything. He as we indicated in a previous episode, he named some new experts, a forensic expert, a video expert, a car crash expert. And so he wants to redo this case all over again. To what extent he can do that, I'm not 100% sure, because you can always bring the old witnesses in to say, hey, this is what you said the first time. Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the idea is if the data extraction wasn't done properly the first time, let's do it again. But I can see what Jackson is saying, no, you're not going near that car, because there's already enough suspicion about this case. Need we mention, a lot of the things that have happened and a lot of the questions that have happened. And so, of course, he's going to have to have his person in there watching and seeing what goes on. So to what extent, I really don't know, because they at one point they talked about how if the defense expert's not happy with something that the state's expert is doing, they may have to call back to the attorneys, and the attorneys are going to have to talk about it and maybe even bring it into the court. So that could be an extensive process. But the judge was very firm, saying, you know what, we just want to get this done, and we want to get it done now. We want to get it. Let's fiddle around. Let's get it done before Thanksgiving, which is only, sadly, not that long from now. So, Yannetti argued that both parties agreed 95%, I'm going to say, in trying to get the trial continued from January 27th to April 1st. Basically because they want to pare things down, streamline it, get the new experts in. So they agreed for the most part. David Yannetti, Karen Reed's attorney, explained to Judge Cannone just exactly why more time is needed before this trial and why they should have just a 2-month extension.
I would remind the court that during the last trial, we were still receiving reports and some discoverable material as trial was ongoing, sometimes deep into a trial. And we're really trying to avoid that this time. It's really not fair to Ms. Reed that discovery is not complete well in advance of trial, so that we can assimilate and incorporate that discovery into what would now be a retrial.
And so Judge Cannone listened to all of that, and she didn't rule on that. Even though she ruled on something else we're going to leave to the end, she didn't rule on that. She's, like I said before, I think she's just trying to pressure the attorneys to get this thing done, because I think she'd like to get this trial done.
Yeah, I mean, it's been taking a long time. It's continuing to take a long time. It's going to persist way beyond this. It's like, again, like we said with the witnesses, it's just like when you have, it's not beneficial to make it longer. It's not beneficial to have more witnesses inherently. It's just like more witnesses isn't going to necessarily be better. When you have the jury, you want the jury to be in the right headspace to make the decision. You want them to be able to remember everything. You don't want everything to get kind of lost. So
after the kerfuffle over all of this, the who and how and where the data is going to be extracted, and to what extent there are, in fact, other discovery motions pending, which we can get into. But that was some of the meat of this. At the end, they're all standing there with their schedule books. They've got to have 2 more hearings in the next couple of weeks. One of them is a Daubert hearing, which is to determine whether one of the experts is really qualified. And then there's some subpoenas that have to go out, which we can get into. One of them is for Karen Reed's father's phone. They want to extract the data from his phone. And there's some other data that they are seeking. So they're talking about scheduling, and it's tough because there are 6 attorneys. There are 6 attorneys for the prosecution. I'm sorry, there are 3 attorneys for the prosecution. There are 3 attorneys for Karen Reed. And getting all those attorneys together, and by God, I don't know why they can't Zoom it, but for whatever reason, all 6 of them have to be in the courtroom. And so they're talking, they're going back and forth with their schedule books. I've done this many times. You go into court with your schedule, and you're trying to consolidate and coordinate. And Alan Jackson was explaining he's a busy attorney out in LA, and he's got some obligations. Judge Cannone didn't take very well to that, as has often been the case. She's a little bit sterner with the defense attorney. I think objectively speaking, that can be said. And she had this terse statement for Mr. Jackson that, well, why don't you just take a red-eye flight?
You could take, a lot of people take a red eye, right? Can you come out then?
I do every time.
You can't fly out on the 9th, the evening of the 9th?
There's no way.
So I don't know about that. I really don't know about that comment in any event, you know. So that was that. Yeah, they talked about getting some discovery done. Both sides want to do more discovery. And as we saw Attorney David Yannetti explain, they were getting some of this discovery in the middle of the trial, and that is not right. That is not right. When that happened in the Alex Baldwin case, it was dismissed. Come on, prosecution, you can't do that. So they're talking about doing something called Bates stamping. And what Bates stamping is paginating everything. In the old days, there was a big metal stamp that they stamped all the exhibits with. And so if you and I were trying a case, I'd say, Laney Law, turn to Bates stamp page 38, and you'd find the exhibit. Well, they didn't, ironically, crazily, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. And the famous inverted video of the Lexus.
Oh my gosh.
You know, that apparently the defense never even saw that before the trial. And that's a big no-no. Why there wasn't some kind of a conference or some kind of at something at least in camera in the judge's chambers to discuss that. How that was allowed to pass is beyond comprehension.
They argue about a lot of things, and then there's just so much random stuff like that passes that you wouldn't expect it to. It's like they're just like, we just want to watch him go through the thing, and like we said before, it's just like then they're gonna get into a disagreement, and then it's gonna go back to the court anyway. But for all these procedures that we're having for all these different things, it's crazy that they just like omit the procedure to be showing these videos and to be popping up evidence and stuff. I agree with the defense in that case, where it's only fair to have everything with discovery done way in advance so they have time to actually look at everything that's going to happen. Because how are you going to argue against magic? Like it's like something you did, it just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's but it's a lot of work. Getting all of that stuff together is a lot of work. At one point, Hank Brennan said that he's brought his full-time paralegal into this whole thing, which is a good thing. But even working together with a full-time paralegal, this is an awfully lot of work to get all the exhibits together, number the exhibits, paginate them with this Bates stamp system, even with computers now. So it's a lot of work. And to get it done, you know, before January 27th, bearing in mind that the holidays are ahead of us and hopefully we all have our lives.
But Andrew, you could get it done on your red eye.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have so much time on your red eye. I hate that. That, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in like the legal world. But to just say to someone to get on a red eye, it's just like you're already taking a plane. Planes are already so expensive, and now you're trying like that was just a little rude, I thought, in my opinion.
And who wants to fly from LA to Boston overnight and then
work
get up and appear in court? I mean, don't you have a chance to go to a hotel and, you know, iron your suit or whatever? I mean, that's ridiculous.
I can't sleep on planes.
No,
it's called the red eye for a reason.
So Judge Cannone did rule on something right away. She ruled on that issue of the telematics in the car. So here is her order. Came out the same day, as you can see down there in the date block, dated 11/13/24. That is the same day as the hearing. This is the Commonwealth's order permitting reassembly and testing of defendants' Lexus telematics systems. Upon review and hearing on the Commonwealth's notice for reassembly and additional testing of defendant's Lexus telematics system, it is hereby ordered that testing may occur to acquire the vehicle's data. It is hereby ordered that should the defendant seek to have their own expert present for testing, they provide the Commonwealth the name and contact information of their expert within 5 days.
I wanted to clap, and then the 7 scratched out 5. It was so bad. Wow, that's so mean. For no
I strongly
reason.
suspect that how this happened is a lot of times the courts want us to give them a printed proposed order. And so that's what I think, if you can follow me there, that's why that black is stricken. Someone, probably Mr. Brennan, wrote Commonwealth's proposed order permitting reassert. Actually, this would have probably been written by the defense. So they probably wrote Commonwealth's order permitting reassembly. Whoever wrote it, that's the word that's scratched out, is proposed, because one of the attorneys wrote this and they wanted to give 7 days. And the judge said, no.
No.
Scritched
I'm
it out.
2 of those. Like,
She
wow.
scritched it out and turned it into 5 days.
2 days. Oh, she's bad.
Yeah, we commonly, in fact, in the federal courts, most times we are required to write a proposed order. So not only do we write a motion, I want Karen Reed's father's cell phone data. I want the original interview tapes from Boston Magazine, which they did, and the original interview tapes from the Vanity Fair article, which we went over just a couple of weeks ago. They want the original unedited video from ABC via WCVB Channel 5 in Boston. They want NBC 10's original video, not just what came through that we could all watch on TV. But they want the original video because the Commonwealth contends the Commonwealth is thinking that she gave inconsistent statements. Now, whether she did give inconsistent statements and whether some inconsistent statements rise to the level of anything, important remains to be seen. In our next episode, we are going to be speaking with a very brilliant attorney who's been following this case intently, Mark Betterow. He is the attorney for Aidan Kearney, who, if you don't know by now, he is the Turtle Boy. So we're going to get more into that. But what the Commonwealth is seeking now is all of these statements from all these media sources, and they're going to try and say, oh, look, Karen Reed gave all of these interviews before, and she contradicted herself. Well, I don't know. I really don't know. So anyhow.
Speaking of statements, I'm wondering, did you ever get a statement from Morrissey?
No. Thank you for bringing that up. So the background of that is way back on October 31st. It was only days after the Vanity Fair article had come out. And one of the things that Vanity Fair had said was that none of the top prosecutors in the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office wanted to try the case. The top prosecutors refused to try the case. And that's why Michael Morrissey had to go outside and find a special counsel and bring in Hank Morrissey. Hank Brennan, I misspoke. So he brought in Hank Brennan, and a lot of people, scratched their heads. I actually sent a letter by fax to Mr. Morrissey, having called and been told there would be no comment at that time. So I sent a fax back on October 31st. Hadn't heard. I knew it was him when the phone didn't ring. So today, right before we recorded this episode, I called and I actually got his new press secretary's voice tree message. What do you call that? The voice tree message? When you call in and a person answered the phone, but they shuttled me off to the press office. Mm-hmm. And it was his new spokesman, David Linton, who used to work at the Spokes Chronicle newspaper for many, 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 many years. No casting aspersions on him. He was a great reporter. He was a crime reporter. But he now, for whatever reason, left reporting, and he is the press person for D.A. Morrissey. But what does he do? Is this one of those state jobs where you don't even have to show up? Because I wrote to them back on October 31st. I called this morning and said, hey, I haven't heard back. And so as it stands now, District Attorney Michael Morrissey has neither confirmed nor denied that all the top prosecutors in his office refused to retry the Karen Reed case. So I think it's fair to draw the appropriate assumption from that, don't you?
Yeah, well, there's a reason they needed a new press spokesman to take care of the situation. It seems like they've got a little bit going on in that office right now.
Yeah, but how hard would it have been for him to write a 2-sentence press release? We deny it. But we agree. How hard? What kind of a job is it where someone calls in and asks a question and you don't get back to them in 2 weeks?
They're just trying to hide. They're just like, they don't want to like lie and say that's not the case. So they're just like avoiding the.
So we'll keep
the
mentioning
issue.
it. Every episode we do on Karen Reed. Well, by the way, I'm not holding my breath. Every episode that we do, we will, bring this up. I mean, I think it's just endemic. I mean, how they have a open website that has press releases posted to it. So yeah, we had one commenter when I first mentioned this 2 weeks ago. We had one commenter who, I forget the exact words, but pretty much said, "Who do you think you are? Who are you to ask the prosecutor?" Well, I pay taxes.
Anyone can ask.
He's a state employee in a state in which we all pay taxes, and so who am I not to?
I think everybody has a right to ask whatever they want. I just think it's phenomenal that Andrew has the guts to do it.
So the reason I understand,
journalism.
I understand. I used to be in the media, and I mean, there are literally dozens of reporters in Boston. So, you have a press event and it's just like they would, clog up this room. This room isn't even half big enough to hold them all. So I do understand that they can't get back to all 24 of them, but how hard would it be to just post a press release? I mean, even I am competent enough to post a blog article on my blog. And back when I was a blogger, it didn't take me 2 weeks. We would sit around and we would write it during the week. Then I would edit it and I would post it on a Sunday morning. So, and that was a big, long thing. Our blog articles were anywhere from 500 to 1,500 to 2,000 words. And we did it in a week. So, while we were doing other stuff.
Well, and I think now, too, we need to consider, because this is something that's really important with this case, is that it's easily accessible and available on YouTube. I think we live in an age now, like you mentioned, the blogs on your website, where now it's even so much easier to communicate with people. We have Twitter, X, we have all these different mediums. I mean, I personally like to use Threads. There's just like infinite ways that you can communicate with the public. And I think that an issue with this case and a lot of the other high profile cases that we're seeing is that the public gets really frustrated when there is this lack of transparency, and it feels like, people in power are hiding things. And I think that's where a lot of this frustration and where a lot of this interest is coming from in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, like them or not, the politicians on both sides have really taken over social media. Whether it is the president's press secretary or the incoming president owning his own social media. Again, I don't care where you stand politically. All politicians of all stripes and all places in the rainbow, as it were, are now using social media because it's easy. It's easy. You just gibber something out and click the button and you go on with the rest of your day. But anyhow, all right. I think we belabored the point enough. I think my closing thought would be, to the extent that the SJC says, yeah, you're going to have to try the case again. And that's kind of what I think. I'm not 100% positive. I wouldn't bet even the coffee money on it. There's going to be a retrial in the Karen Reed case, at least on count 2. And it looks like it will be a different day. Hopefully there will be fewer witnesses. Hopefully it will go more efficiently and quickly, and that all parties involved, including the court, will just focus on this trial and not take days and days at a time. So that's kind of my thought, that it would be a good thing if it were a shorter trial, more efficient trial, fewer witnesses, fewer exhibits that don't really go to the point. And hopefully that'll happen. What are your closing thoughts?
It's a lot. I mean, I'm glad that they're going to be able to view the whole process as it's happening with the car data. The 5 days, the 7 scratched off and turned into a 5 is a little dramatic. And in my opinion, that maybe there's logical reasons that they did that. I don't know.
Yeah, really. And what's the difference between 5 days and 7 days? I mean, come on, give me a break.
Like, bro, give me the homework extension, which is like, like they're basically saying you better have someone that you're thinking of right now. Let's get this over with. But like, it's just like you're gonna have how many hearings about the jury and you're going to take away the 2 days for this. It felt a little mean. And, she's probably very frustrated. If I were her, I would probably be getting a lot of mean emails every day. So I can understand why she's frustrated with this case. But there's just so many different elements of it. And I do hope that we get as much transparency. I hope that the next case, like you said, it goes smoothly and that we don't find ourselves in any more issues. And we appreciate everybody who watches our videos to the end. And should we tell them to comment an emoji if they made it to the end? What kind of emoji are you thinking of?
Oh, I don't know.
Is there dolphin emojis?
That's your department, the emojis.
Can you guys comment little dolphins if there's dolphins, or the color blue hearts? Maybe. I don't know if there's a dolphin emoji if you made it this far, but we appreciate you guys for watching our videos. Yes, and please do subscribe and like below, and feel free to comment below. We do read all the comments. I try to answer as many as I can, but you've sent us so many, I can't totally keep up, but we do read them. I at least read them, and we, as in the past, we've done entire episodes or just partial episodes reading your comments. So be nice. I try to delete as few as possible, but YT itself actually puts them into a special, I don't know what that's called, but some of them that are really mean and nasty and use foul language, they take those. So I've actually had comments, why did you delete my comment? I don't. YouTube will delete them if there's naughty words in them, and I will delete them if you personalize. I mean, tell me why you don't like Mr. Morrissey. We just spent a half hour giving you our opinion. Tell me why you're critical of the way the court is handling the case. Don't call them names, because I'm a member of the Mass Bar. I respect the bench. I respect other attorneys. If you could notice, Mr. Yannetti and Mr. Brennan were actually prosecutors in Massachusetts, and they are expected to be amicable. So you don't see them in court calling each other names. So let's say whatever you want, but tell me why you don't like it. Please be nice to Andrew's coworkers, because if they ever look at his page and they see you're all calling people silly names and such, it's not a good look. We're nice, we're civil, we're just trying to report things in an honest and entertaining way.
Time to go to the grocery store. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.
A lot of people take a red eye, right?